believe we're live. Are we alive or dead? Let me know if you can hear me out there. This is Frankie from Flatbush. We're experiencing extremely cold temperatures in Central Florida, and you never know what's going to happen. But it's February the 1st. We made it all the way to February 2026, 10 a.m. on the East Coast of America. Um, Todd says he's going to be late. He's got to take care of the Aminels. Joe Mike is here. He's got questions about the Rasta. Rasta. Phil Adams is here from across the pond. Mr. Net Warrior, it's about time. About time for what? Phil Adams says 100. All right. So here we are. It's February 1st. We don't even have an offensive coordinator. Now the Sachetti's here. So I may sneeze. I may cough. I'm still a little under the weather, and I apologize about that, but nothing I can do except try to get better day by day. Now, the news that came out about the Jets yesterday was that Greg Roman, the Roman Empire, has made it to the finalist stage of the OC search. And apparently there were 3 who made it through, but we don't know who the other 2 are. Speculated that is Frank Reich is one of the other 2. But we don't know. And apparently these interviews are going to be taking place early next week. I would presume tomorrow. We got to get these people in place. So we don't know. We're not getting any information from the Jet Beat writers. What Rub It In Rich Cimini is publishing today is a Rub It In article, as I predicted, about Sam Darnold. He went back and interviewed Mike McCagnon. He somehow got Mike McCagnon on the phone, and then he got Jamal Adams on the phone, and then he got Robbie Chosen on the phone. So this is another trick of the mainstream media where they go and get the most disgruntled douchebags that had a bad time with us. And what do you think they're going to say about Sam Darnold? Oh, I knew he was going to be great. The Jets made a big mistake. The man threw 39 interceptions in 3 years, but we made a big mistake. Only the Jets could mistake this talented guy who threw 39 interceptions in 3 years. Only them could say, well, yeah, but wait till next year. Oh, okay. So, as predicted, there you go. I wrote about this, and then I just reposted it. I wrote about this in advance because I saw it coming. I wrote this January 26th. A long time ago now. And you should follow me on X, at Flatbush Frankie. Some of you are starting to follow me and send me messages on there. So now I got to check my messages there. But I go through the whole thing. And we all, I think, are rooting for Sam Darnold. These writers think we have some sort of animus towards Sam Darnold. I don't think anybody really does. Darnold's a good guy. He just didn't perform well enough for us to keep him. But I go through the whole, excuse me, the whole timeline and lay it out in clear language instead of the bullshit journalism of Rub It In Rich Cimini, who will do anything to find disgruntled people to talk badly about the Jets. So that's where we are right now. Duncan Lloyd is here. Richard from Jersey's here. Joe Mike. Yeah, all right. Joe Mike is on the same wavelength here. This is what I was thinking. What if it's Reich as OC, but Roman as the running game coordinator? You know, you make him the assistant OC running game coordinator, whatever. He's good at that. That would be actually a pretty exciting scenario. And we just got to figure out who the quarterback is. But if that's what happens, I'm not hating on that now. I think they should not have gotten rid of Tanner Engstrand. I think that was a mistake. But given that they did that, this would be a good outcome. But we don't know what's going to happen. There's not any leaking or reports. It's weird. Connor Hughes isn't saying shit lately. It's weird how Hughes will have a bunch of information and a bunch of opinions and then go quiet. Now, he is the one who put this idea out there, which was interesting. He said the Jets are looking for multiple coaches on the offensive side of the ball. Could be a similar situation here with regard to Roman. Interview for OC, but hired for something else. And it's not hard to figure out what the something else is. This guy is known to be great at designing a running game. He did so with the Ravens for those years and such. So, but he really hasn't said anything about the Jets since then. It really makes you wonder. James Thompson is here. Sacchetti says there's buffering. Not from my end, buddy. Maybe refresh. Duncan Lloyd, Phil Adams. Yeah, we can't do any music. For those who don't know, I transitioned from those online services to OBS. When you run OBS, there's no server. So in other words, when you're using a SaaS product, you're connecting to their servers and running all of your stuff through their servers. So if you upload a song, for example, and they have an ability to play the song, it's running through their server and out just the same way their entire service is, right? That's how you hear the song. OBS runs on my computer, so there's no server here, and there's no real way to then play music because I can't, it doesn't work like that. So that's the problem with that. Eddie Hunt is here. Boss Girl is here. She gave a donation. Can't chat. Says sub 4+ weeks. Change things. Thank you for the donation. I thought I had it for 1 week. That's what I meant to do. Let's see if we can change it to 1 week. That's what I meant to do. Sometimes, let's see. See what we can do here. Customization. Oh, yeah. I meant to hit week and it hit month. I see. All right. So I just changed it. Let's see if it works. See if it works. But we got to keep the trolls out. That's for sure. Hot toddy time. Yeah, probably need to get some of those. Jojo says Bevel, QB coach, could be. We don't know. Oh, this is great news, Eddie. See, this is what we need more of right here, what Eddie's doing. Eddie took action. I applaud this. Good job, buddy. Now, hopefully you did so politely. You got to stay polite with these guys, even though it's tempting to curse them out. Right? But this is exactly the same. This is exactly the idea we should all be trying to do, something like this. Now, more people should be asking Rosenblatt, and I did a whole thing on X about it, in case you didn't see it. Why it is that Gruden's denying it, and Craig Carton. Craig Carton went on a whole thing where he called the Jets about this, and he explained how he went through it. And when Craig Carton gave you that clip, when that clip was shown and it was retweeted by Country Club, anybody could do the same things that Craig Carton did. Their phone number is right on the website. So if you want to call the Jets, you could do exactly what. Just go to NewYorkJets.com, and eventually you'll find a phone number somewhere. If you can't, DM me on X. I'll go look at my green book. I have it. I'll give you the number. But anybody can do it where you call them up and you politely ask for the media person and you say, I'm an independent journalist covering the Jets, or whatever you want to say. But you got to be polite, and you have to have, you can't say, I'm Eddie Hunt and I'm trying to, and I want to trap Zach Rosenblatt in a story. You just say, I'm an independent journalist covering the Jets, or something to that effect. And then they give you the media person, and you say, okay, Zach Rosenblatt published this. I would like to get confirmation from the Jets. Just pretend you're a journalist, and they'll give you an answer. And then you could take that answer plus any other information you have back to Rosenblatt and say, excuse me, seems like you're violating journalistic ethics, which is how I always accuse him or anyone like this. It's about journalistic ethics. It's not that he's an asshole. It's not that he's a jerkwad, even though he is. Not that he's a beta cuck motherfucker, which he is, but you don't tell him that. You approach it from a journalistic ethics standpoint. He's supposed to have some ethics as a journalist. It does come with the territory. And it seems like in this case, he did not meet the requirements of journalistic ethics. He went with a story, number one, that may be completely untrue, but if it has some validity, he certainly slanted it in a way to make the Jets look bad. Again, these people are your enemy. You should know that. And you should then prepare a game plan or a war plan to go to war against them. Now, like I said, you should always remain polite. You should always remain respectful, and you should always focus on journalistic ethics, because that's the only way that has a chance of working. If you go and you're overly mean and you use nasty words and language, they're just going to block you. What happened to Eddie Hunt? So that's good that Eddie took action. I'm not so sure that him blocking you does anything, Eddie. But at least you took action. And like I said, we here at FSPN applaud that, because most people won't even do that much. Most people won't even pick up a phone. They won't send a tweet. They won't even like a tweet that I send. They won't even click like on something. Amazing. So take action, but be smart about it would be my advice. Todd is here. B-Trav is here. The Trav Meister. BBA. Why would any Jets fans hate Sam or Zach? I blame the assholes who drafted and or coached them. Yeah. Well, so Sam's problem was we didn't build him up. We didn't give him a team around him that we could properly evaluate him. Zach, we did a little better. But we still didn't give him probably enough. But the problem with him was there was so much risk on his resume that he shouldn't have gone second overall. Second round pick, sure. Maybe even late first. But if you're taking somebody up that high, you got to be 1,000% sure that was really the problem. And he could have worked out, and he might still be good at some point in time. But that was the big problem. And of course, we decided to trade Sam for him, essentially. But that was a flawed theory. That's what my tweet goes into. If you read it, I would say X is the new water cooler of our society. And that's why I think everybody should be on X. Even if you never say anything, it's such a great information feed. Sacheti, Tannerlands, yeah, you knew he was going to get a job, and he did. He did not become an OC, though. Rosenblatt was also on a podcast where he's saying he never reported that the Jets offered, which is exactly what he reported. Exactly. He backtracked. He said he called into WFAN with Sneaky Boo Boo and Evan Bobs. Well, how anybody listened to Sneaky Boo Boo, I don't know. But anyway, Sneaky Boo Boo's over there, and he calls in and he says, I stand by my reporting. Then he says, I know for sure a call was made. I don't know if it was Aaron Glenn. I don't know if they offered him a job, but I know a call was made. That's not what the reporting was. So right there, that's what you can use against him. And again, go after him as journalistic ethics. You're saying a call was made. All right. Maybe Woody called up John Gruden. You know, they both live in the Tampa area here in Florida. It's not too far-fetched to think Woody knows Gruden as a neighbor, proximity neighbor. They're both very rich. Obviously, Woody more rich, but they both live in the rich parts of town here. And so maybe Woody was just calling to say, how you doing? Hey, any interest in coaching, due diligence? Maybe thinking ahead to next year. You never know. Any interest at all? You know, or are you totally dead set against coaching ever? You know, maybe he was just placing a call for the next few years. You never know. So a call was made. All right. But that's not what the report was. The report was we called him about the OC job and that he had no interest in the job, was the report. And that's how you do it. Now, these reporters should be held accountable for the words that they use. They're reporters. The semantics are important. Language. I'm now in grad school again, getting another master's degree. One of the things we have to learn about is semantics. Semantics are concerned with the meaning, specifically how language conveys meaning. And so if you're a journalist, the words that you use, the semantics, what you mean to say, is very, very important. And that's a sort of angle you could take. You said this, you reported this, and anything he puts on his Twitter is report because he works for the New York Times. So he's a reporter, a journalist. Anything he puts out in that about the team he covers is essentially reporting. He put it out a certain way, and then he tried to backtrack while saying, I stand by my reporting. You can't do that. You can't do that. That's called being a fabulist. You're creating a fable. You're taking a tiny, tiny part of the truth. A call was made, and you're saying the Jets offered him the OC job and he wasn't interested in the job, which makes... Now, there's damages here. The other thing, the other side of this, there's also damages. He is intentionally inflicting damage, because he knows what he's doing, on the Jets. Why is that a damage if he reputationally harms the Jets? Because now it's going to be harder to get coaches to say yes when they see things like this, or get players to come here in free agency when they see things like this. So he's intentionally doing harm to your team. Why is that okay? Eddie Hunt took action, and I applaud that. More of you should do so, because it's not okay for him to intentionally inflict harm and reputational damage to the team that we're trying to get on the right fucking track. Like, that's not cool. And that's also not journalism. It's not reporting. It's you being a fabulist. And that doesn't mean being fabulous. It means creating a fable. It's not good. And in fact, could be actionable if Woody Johnson wanted to sue, but that also makes you look bad when you sue journalists. So, very, very rough. But I applaud Eddie's efforts. Last week was 8 weeks, this week 4. 8 weeks. I don't know what you're talking about, Net Warrior. Boss Girl, yay! Okay, so got you in. All right. Good to see you in the chat, Phil Adams. Eddie, I have screenshots and was polite. Well, kind of polite. That's the thing, Eddie. I think you got to kind of go overboard on the politeness. You got to, because the worst thing you want to do is start attacking the person personally in this regard, because then they could just easily block you, and everything you say when you insult the person personally is then you're sort of like injuring yourself in a sense. You almost want to be overly polite and try to do it that way. It's hard, admittedly. you want to empty the gun, right? You want to empty the bazooka on this guy, but it's like you can't. You gotta show some restraint. Otherwise, anything you say will just be thrown off as unserious. Joe Mike, Darnold to the Super Bowl. Imagine if Joe Douglas had a better real. Yeah. But, hey, what's done is done. Douglas fucked that up. He took a huge risk. Give him one thing. That took a lot of balls. I'll say that. Took a lot of balls to take a guy with that much risk on his resume with the second overall pick, because he really thought he was going to be elite. And he had, the physical characteristics to do it. It was just all up here was the problem. I also commented on some athletic Insta posts asking the same. Well, that's good. That's good, Eddie. That's good. Yeah, this is a good question by Boss Girl. And not only that, Boss Girl, but Dan Quinn did exactly what Aaron Glenn did. He fired his OC and his DC and a lot of staff. He basically just gutted the staff. But the difference is that Dan Quinn is at a different level than Aaron Glenn. Dan Quinn has tons of experience. He's well respected, been to the Super Bowl, although he was the coach on the other end of 28-3. Motherfucker. That was the Brady comeback of all comebacks. But anyway, he'd been to the Super Bowl, all this experience, highly respected DC. And Aaron Glenn has none of that. I mean, he was a pretty respected DC for his work with the Lions, but nothing to the level of Dan Quinn. And Dan Quinn had been a head coach that got to the Super Bowl. Lost it terribly, but at least he got there, right? So he's at a different level. And I also think, of course, we pay attention to what all these beat reporters are saying about us, because we're very sensitive about it. But some Washington Commander beat writers might have said something similar. We don't know. But yeah, that's what I was thinking the other day, too. I was like, man, they're doing exactly the same thing we are. We're catching flack and they're not. Well, that's what happens when you have a Super Bowl, coach and then you have a first-year guy. We gave Sam, yeah, right. How could he succeed with no O-line and no wide receivers and nothing? So it wasn't a fair. That's what I say in my X post, JoJo. If you go and read it, I think it's one of the better things I've written. It goes through his problems with interceptions and stuff like that. But basically, if you want to know the truth, you want to know the breakdown, Sam is the same as he's always been. This is going to be somewhat controversial. His problem has always, and this is what I wrote on X if you want to go see it in full detail. His problem has always been interceptions. And I go through his interceptions per game going all the way back to college. And it's pretty consistent. With the Jets, it spiked up a little bit. But even now, he's throwing too many interceptions. The difference with the last 2 years where he's had success, Vikings and Seahawks, he's had a very good team around him. So they overcame the interceptions better, including really good defenses. So could withstand some low-scoring games, and therefore he's had more chances, and he's taken advantage by throwing more touchdowns relative to interceptions than he did when he was here, or with the Panthers, or in college. So that's really the difference. They put stacked teams around him, and he's still throwing too many interceptions, but they can withstand those turnovers because they're scoring more touchdowns and they have better defenses. That's basically it. He's kind of the same player. It's kind of weird. But then again, whenever he has like an awesome game, like he did in the championship game, he played amazing. Everybody goes, "See, I told you. See, I told you," including Connie Carberg, by the way, who I love, but she loves Sam Darnold more than life itself, and she was writing 10,000 tweets about this guy. It's like, calm down, Connie, please. He's still throwing way too many picks, which was the problem. He threw 39 picks in 3 years. I mean, but yeah, he had nothing around him. That's why I say that Douglas's process was flawed. How are you going to compare Darnold with nothing around him to the college kids coming out, and all who have different circumstances? This is what he did. He compared Zach Wilson and Trey Lance and Mac Jones and Justin Fields, and who were all in the class that we had access to because we weren't going to get Lawrence. And he compared them to Darnold, and he graded them out, and Zach came out on top. But all of those players, even in college, have much different circumstances, different schedules. It was COVID time. There was all this weird shit going on. And how can you even compare Darnold in the pros with nobody around him to Zach Wilson at BYU during COVID with a very weak schedule and all the stuff he had going for him, nobody in the crowds, very weird time? How can you do a fair comparison? That was a terrible, he didn't take into account model risk is what the problem was. What if your model that you're using to make this evaluation is flawed? He never thought about that, apparently. But that's something you always have to take into consideration when you're doing something like that. What if the way I'm doing the evaluation is incorrect? And you need to account for that. And that was basically the problem. JD was the problem. Yeah, the way he did his work. Now, he made some good picks, but the way he went about it, no bueno. Exactly. This is exactly right, too. Yeah, maybe he was just calling to say hello. Maybe he was just calling to say, hey, you got a lot of experience, John. Uh, Give me some advice here. You know, Scott is here. Joe Mike is here. I finished watching highlight tape of David Bailey. Yeah, he's definitely in the conversation for sure. It's basically uh, Bain, Reese, or Bailey. So he's definitely up there. Yeah, I mean, false reporting. I mean, it's a good point, but it's in a different way. The fact that you continue to do so much reputational damage to the Jets hurts our chances to improve our fate when we can't attract good coaching and players here because they're not going to listen to Frankie. They're not going to listen to Eddie Hunt. They're just going to go and think that the Athletic and New York Times is a credible source of information. And these guys never suffer any consequences. That's the other thing. These journalists never, ever suffer any consequence, no matter how wrong they are. It's amazing. No one holds them accountable. And I'm sure that there are 10,000 Jet fans who would say, Frankie doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm going to continue reading Zach Rosenblatt. You know, journalism is dead. Well, some journalism's dead. I mean, I try to point out the good ones. You know, if you're looking at sideline reporters, for example, as an example, most of them are terrible. They're horrible. They're just trash. But Holly Rowe is excellent. She is excellent. You know, a guy like Antoine Staley, for example, on our beat, he's pretty good because he doesn't speculate much. He just reports the news. Now, he's not going to break any news either, but Antoine Staley just kind of reports the news, and then he has opinions about chicken wings and, like, you know, players in the draft and stuff. But he generally does not try to harm the Jets or anybody else intentionally. This article today from Rub It In Rich Samini is an attempt to harm the Jets. He went and talked to Jamal Adams and Robbie Chosen, for fuck's sake. Two of the most disgruntled guys that we had. What do you think they're going to say? Like, people need to call this out, and I do. I call him Rub It In Rich because I'm trying for a linguistic kill shot, but it's hard to do when you're a no status person like me. But all he does is rub it in. That's all he does. And this is sort of the selective journalism. It's like, well, it's accurate. Like Jamal Adams said this, and Robbie Chosen said this, and Mike McCagnon said this. So how can you say it's unethical? Because those people are all disgruntled. It's the same. It's in the same vein as that article between Dirty Diana Rossini and Zach the Hack Rosenblatt when they had that long article about how dysfunctional the Jets were. There was some truth in it, of course, but they talked to 30 disgruntled people who got fired by the Jets. How is that fair journalism? Oh, then we let the Jets respond to it. That's not fair journalism. That's ridiculous. And it has an actual harm to our team. Now, do the Jets bring a lot of that on themselves? Yeah, of course. Of course they do. Uh, every time fucking Woody opens his mouth, he does damage to the Jets, motherfucker. But still, okay, Red. Yeah, that's the other thing, man. If you have people like Assman in the independent press, independent side of things, though he's not independent, he's paid by Disney, then you need to unsubscribe from those people. You need to stop paying attention to people who intentionally damage our brand and our team. Now, on this channel, we'll tell you when we think they're doing something wrong. You know, we made a bunch of mistakes with the roster last year. Glenn was not great at game management last year. There was a lot of problems. I told you what those were, and that's fair game. But when they go overboard and they go into really questionable, tactics, that's when you got to cut them off and say no more. No more, no matter who they are. Duncan Lloyd, hit the like button. Yeah, if you enjoy my media rantings and ravings, hit the like button. Why not? Yeah. Indifferent, I guess, machine. Yeah, back in the day, my friend. 100%, my brother consumes way too much of it. He's miserable. Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. It affects people. It's like you can't even have a conversation with people. Yeah, it's another good point by Boss Girl. Boss Girl makes a lot of good points, I must say. She's in the female minority. I think 99.9% of this channel's audience is male. Assuming that Boss Girl is actually female, we don't know. She got a picture of a cute doggy, but you never know. But so she's in the female minority, extreme female minority here. But it's good to see. We'd love to have more females join up and and have commentary. But she makes great points, and here's another one. They, Muji and AG were left with a terrible roster situation, and they didn't do themselves any favors with some of the choices they made, but they were never going to have a great team because we needed a complete reset. They could have done themselves a favor and communicated a little differently to the fan base in the beginning instead of being so braggadocious and so chest out and we're going to win now and win, blah, blah, blah. They could have, you never want to say we're going to lose, but you could say, look, we're going to try to win now, but we understand that, sometimes it takes a little time to get things on the right track or something like that. They could have said that, but they didn't. That's what saved them. Well, I can't speak to to the old days. We got Pennington in here. He was okay. Vinny had that 1 year. And we had those 2 runs to the championship game with, what's his name? But Sanchez. But, everything since 2011 has been terrible. The modern age of football is 2011 on. And we and the Giants, by the way, have not been able to navigate the new CBA when that started then. We made a lot of bad decisions, then we made more bad decisions, and then more bad decisions. Vinny Bad says, I hate Rich Samini. Michael James, Shanahan traded 4 picks for Trey Lance. I know, right? Imagine what he would have traded with us. Yeah, Christ. Yeah, the only thing that really saved them was finding Brock Purdy, really. And Boss Girl says, I am a female. Born in state. All right, we'll take your word for it. FSBN, always objective. Well, I try to be, Iowa. We get some things wrong sometimes, and if we do, then we admit it. That's what we do. We don't stand there and say, now, here's something else. If you want to understand this at a very, very fundamental level, if you haven't already, you should watch all 5 seasons of The Wire. And if you've never seen it, it's one of the best television shows of all time. Most of the experts will tell you that. It's a top 5 program of all time. Get the DVDs, watch all 5 seasons. And then once you watch it, then you could ask yourself, now the showrunner of The Wire was David Simon, and he was a longtime reporter for the Baltimore Sun. So he was in the news business. And you got to ask yourself, why was season 5 of The Wire focused on the media? And once you start asking that question, you'll understand where we are as a society much better. Or you could also read Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky, which is, we don't have the ticker up here today, but I could turn it on. But, Manufacturing Consent, if you're into reading books, which not a lot of football fans are, but if you are, that's a great one to get, and you will understand the media landscape, different ways to wrap your mind around where we are and the importance of these people. I think these people are important people. And that's why we got to try to keep them on the right track as much as we can. I also happen to believe that the role of the independent media is to keep the mainstream media in line to the degree that you can. So we'll see. Salute to Boss Girl. Duncan Lloyd, there seems to be some talk about Nussmeier. Yeah. So one of the things I hate is the fucking Senior Bowl because because so many people will just write off years of tape and go, "This guy played well at the Senior Bowl." So Nussmeier is similar to Ty Simpson in that it's a hard evaluation to do. Last year he totally sucked, was benched, and was awful. He's 6 feet tall and has small hands and no athleticism. However, it said that he had a significant abdominal injury or some kind of injury, and that's why he sucked so much. Which brings up the point of, well, then why were you playing? So you were injured so badly that it affected your performance, and you were willing then to go and hurt your team, LSU, to go out there and play with a major injury? Why are you doing that? That speaks to intelligence, not too high. I'm going to tough it out. Well, you're going to make your team lose. They had a horrible season. They fired their coach. Now they got Lane Kiffin over there. So there's that. What do you want to believe about Nussmeier? That he's actually good, but played bad because of an injury? Or you believe your eyes of what he did in 2025 and he just sucks? I don't know. But he's the type of guy, I would not take him until day 3. Day 3, you could take flyers all day long. You want to take Drew Aller, you want to take Nuss, you want to take Cabe Klubnik, you want to take whoever. Day 3, go crazy. But I'm not wasting a day 2 pick on him. What are you, crazy? First of all, he's 6 feet tall. He has tiny hands, and he has no athleticism. So his upside, even if he works, is a smaller dime store Mac Jones. Do you want a small dime store version of Mac Jones? Is that what you're looking for? Well, maybe with a 6th-round pick or a 5th-round pick, you want to take a flyer because the floor is he's horrible and he's out of the league and he's a CFL quarterback. His upside, the best he could be, the best he could possibly be is dime store Mac Jones with 5 inches shorter and smaller hands, which means fumbling, which means can't play in the rain and snow. These small hands guys are problematic. The one problem that Drake May has, he has relatively small hands. That's never going to change. He's always probably going to have fumble problems. But he makes up for it in a lot of other ways. This guy is not Drake May, and not even close. So, no, this guy got benched in the midst of a horrible season, and it's just played terrible. And if you think it's all because of an injury, I mean, that smacks of the sort of thing player agents say when their guy sucks. Oh, it was an injury, don't worry. Now, was he injured? I don't know. College injuries are not like the NFL. They don't have to tell you very much in college. So nobody really knows. Was he injured? Was he not? No one knows. So to me, that's a lot of risk. Therefore, you want to take a guy with a lot of risk, take him on day 3. That's fine. But I'm not using a day pick on a guy with that much risk on the profile. Fuck no. Nope. Nope. But the reason he's getting hyped now is because he played in the Senior Bowl. And a lot of these scouts who go down to the Senior Bowl, and remember, anybody can go to the Senior Bowl. I could go to the Senior Bowl. I tried it the other year, if you remember. I got tickets. I got a press pass. I didn't go. I was just trying to see if I could get them. And anybody can get them. If I can get them, anybody can get them. Anybody can go down there. And then once they go down there, they have to have content to come back with to make you think, that they're a good scout or whatever, or whatever they're selling, their newsletter, their Substack, their YouTube channel, whatever it is. So that's what they're doing. So now you're going to see all kinds of articles about nuts. And of course, quarterbacks are the hot sizzle item of any football content. So Nussmeier, Diego Pavia, whoever played. And that's what it is. That's why I can't stand the Senior Bowl. Only thing Senior Bowl is good for is getting actual measurements of the players that are not coming from the school. You notice Diego Pavia was listed by Vanderbilt at 6 feet tall. He came in 5'9". So anything in college is pretty much bullshit, which also makes it hard with these injuries because the colleges will just, there's no laws against lying again. So you get real measurements at a place like the Senior Bowl, so that's good. And then any players who are injured, like Caleb Banks, you want to see him play because he was injured for most of the year. That we know he was injured. He had a foot injury. He was out. He had surgery, I believe. So now, and he played 2 games. So you got to see, you want to see him because now he's in the draft. He has skills. He has a skill level if he wasn't injured where he could be in the first round, top half of the first round. But without knowing about the injury, you don't know what he is. So you want to see him at the Senior Bowl to make sure he's over that injury. And I guess you could say the same thing about Nussmeier, but it's harder to tell with quarterbacks. They're not throwing against a real defense. They're just throwing against vanilla bullshit. Oh, look, he threw a 7-yard slant. Wow. But explosion and, all the things, all the drills they do there, it's a lot easier to see with a defensive tackle, for example. Oh, okay, he's exploding off the line. That foot must be pretty good, right? That sort of thing. So that's why it's happening. And I hate that I have to keep saying these things, but this is what happens. You have to know how to filter the news. I think that's the job of the modern person. We have to know how to filter properly the news. Because there's so much and there's so many people that are trying to manipulate the news that you got to filter it properly. Boss Girl says, Bailey scares me. Well, that's the question with David Bailey. Like, if you could get Bailey at 16, ooh, now you're talking. If we had Bain and Bailey, But yeah, Bailey, so we would need, like David Bailey, I like him. I know what his strengths and weaknesses are, but I would want to see, for example, the Joe Blewett breakdown on David Bailey. I want to know because very few people are going to get into the extreme detail that Joe Blewett does, right? So let's wait and see the Blewett video that comes out. One of the few really good things that Jet X Factor does is the Blewett Blitz videos because he gets into extreme detail with these guys. So let's see what he says. And if he comes out of that like, pass rush only, can't hold up against a run, we already have a guy like that. His name is Will McDonald. So we don't need 2 of them, right? So that would be like, well, if he falls to us at 16 or something, all right, but certainly not at 2. Now, if he comes back and Blewett's all in on him, okay, now maybe you get somebody who can hold up against a run and rush the passer and is an athletic freak like he is, okay. But that's one of those ways that we should filter. You wait until the trusted sources. So this is a lot of theories, This is one of my other theories, the guru theory. There are certain trusted gurus you have to have for certain situations. So Dane Brugler's a trusted guru. Joe Blewett, when he's not being a fan, when he's doing analysis of tape, are 2, for example. So I would wait for Brugler's scouting report. I would want to see how he writes him up. And then I would want to see a Blewett breakdown on the tape. And then once you combine those 2 plus your own thoughts from watching him, all right, now you got a better feel for a guy like that. So, Bevel scheduled for Monday just being reported. Reported by who? Giants source Callahan. They're talking about the Giants. Where are you seeing this, Mark? Give me the source, Mark. My NFL reporter sources are talking about the Giants right now. And the Jet beat. Oh, here it goes. No. Rosenblatt is reporting just about the Giants. The Jets, Rosenblatt posted this. Known OC candidates for the Jets. Frank Reich, Greg Roman, Darrell Bevel, Ronald Curry, London Wells. known OC candidates for the Giants: Cliff Kingsbury, Brian Callahan, Davis Webb, Jim Bob Cooter, Alex Tanney, Shane Day. Different flavors. So I don't see what you're talking about. NFL writers, I'm not seeing it there either. So let me know the source there, Mark. Try to find it. Joe Mike, another false narrative. Yeah, well, that's something I don't care about, but interesting, I guess. Jack Strand? Sure. Reese scares me more than Bailey. Fourth in ticket sales, Bain at number 2, and Mesidor at 33. That'd be all right. I think with Glenn calling the defense, he would want a traditional edge like Bain, not a guy like Reese with no clear-cut position. Yeah, that's where I'm leaning, to be honest with you. Now, if Bailey can hold the edge against the run, all right, and then we could have a conversation. I mean, we're going to have to do deep dives on these players eventually. It's only February. We basically we know what they're kind of all about. But I mean, there's a level of detail that goes into these analyses. That's why you really want to use Joe Blewett as one source and then a couple others to really get an understanding of what these players are really all about. We kind of have the broad strokes down about these guys, but like with Bain, some people aren't going to like his arm length, so none of them are perfect. So we'll have to see. Party with Peg and Artie is here. What are the chances the Raiders trade out of the first pick? Well, we don't know because they don't even have a head coach yet. So everybody, as of right now, everybody's putting Mendoza on the Raiders. However, they don't have a head coach. And until they get a head coach, nobody's going to know exactly what they're going to do. I have made the argument they need a bridge more than Mendoza because if you drop Mendoza into that situation, he's likely to fail. However, maybe they feel differently. We don't know. But you got Spy Tech over there, you got Tom Brady over there, and they are going to hire. It seems they're trying to hire Clint Kubiak, and if they don't hire Clint Kubiak, I think they're going to hire maybe Davis Webb. But Clint Kubiak, let's say they hire Clint Kubiak. What do we know about him and quarterbacks? Not much. He's coaching Sam Darnold right now. So maybe he prefers a veteran, to a rookie, which case maybe they stick with Geno or sign somebody else. So we don't know. But all of the information and reporting that we have right now, there's no indications that they're willing to trade, and everybody's putting Mendoza on the Raiders, which means the draft starts with the Jets, if that holds up. But they got to hire a coach. I would think next week they'll have a coach. Next week we'll have an OC, I think. Once that happens, then they got to go through, then they got to hire their staff. Then they got to go through all their processes, all the meetings, talk about first they have to analyze their own roster. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Can we really make do with Geno Smith or not? Do you hate him? Get rid of him? What are we going to do? Release him? Keep him? So all those things TBD. So, it's going to be an exciting offseason. And then really the draft doesn't really start at the Senior Bowl. The draft really starts at the Combine. And the Combine is at the end of this month. So all the teams go down to the Combine. Everybody starts talking to everybody else. The rumor mill starts heating up because all the fucking media is there getting their little tidbits, and they stalk these fuckers out. These reporters are ruthless jackals. They're proud of it. They go, oh yeah, I'll wait by the escalator for this person and that person, stalk them out. When they come by, I try to get information. They think they're Woodward and fucking Bernstein. But So you'll get a lot more rumors then. You'll get a lot more people saying this is the way it seems. They're leaning this way, leaning that way. And then you'll start seeing some teams re-sign their own people. You might see contract restructures, which tell you something about what they're going to do or not do. So, for example, they restructured Kirk Cousins' contract where it seems, as of now, that they're going to release him, which means he'll be a free agent available to any team to sign. However, that could change. Stefanski and Tanner could be like, no, let's keep him. Let's redo his contract. Seems unlikely. They do have Penix coming back from injury. And it was reported that Penix is ahead of schedule with his rehab and might be good to go for week 1. So there's all those type of things going on. We don't know. Excuse me. Willis Chamb. Oh, somebody said Josina Anderson. Okay. That's one person I don't have on my thing because she's so bad. Yeah, in fact, I have her blocked. All right, I'm going to unblock her. And I'm going to, in fact, put her on my list. In X, you can have lists. It's one of the beautiful things about X. I'm going to put her on my NFL National Writers list. All right. So let's see what she's reporting. I'm told Darrell Bevel is currently scheduled for an in-person interview with the Jets on Monday. Beryl has, all right. So that's exactly what you said. All right. That makes sense. Bevel and Reich. Well, now we haven't heard about Reich. So we've heard about Bevel and we've heard about Roman. Where's Reich? That's what's worrisome to me because I think we all would prefer Reich get the job. We haven't heard anything about Reich getting a second interview. All right, so Josina Anderson's now unblocked and on my list. You know, sometimes she goes off on these crazy tangents. It's like she's a very, I would say, unique lady. But then again, sometimes she has a lot of information. All right. All right. Good one, Mark. Good one, Mark. But we got to check these sources. That's another thing. Like if you told me like JPL football or something like that, that's not a credible source. But Josina is, of course. Yeah, Eddie, this is the point I've been making. Do you want to drop Mendoza into that situation? What are the chances he's going to be successful with that roster? And not only and Max Crosby now coming back from a second surgery where he's not going to be able to do second surgery in his career, where he's not going to be able to do his normal offseason workout, which is extremely important for Max Crosby because he's known for his his durability and staying on the field like 100% of the snaps, which nobody does. So him not being able to, it's not that he's not going to play next year, it's that he's not going to be able to do his normal off-season conditioning work. And how is that going to affect him next year? May not, he'll still be good, but he may not be elite anymore. Well, we'll see. Maybe he will be. But even their best player, you have some question marks about. And then you got Brock Bowers and Ashton Genty and Colton Miller, and that's about it. So, I mean, do you really want to put Mendoza in that situation? Is that fair to the rookie? You're going to have a Darnold situation where there's just nothing around him and he has bad year after bad year. And by the time you get the roster up to shape, you're not sure what to do with the quarterback now because he hasn't shown you he can be the guy, but he still has potential. Do you really want to fall into that? Or do you just bridge it at least for one more year? This is what I've been saying. Why not bridge it with Geno? Build up the team this year, bridge with Geno. Blame last year on Chip Kelly. That was a mistake that Tom Brady made. Tom Brady has made tons of mistakes with the Raiders. Everything he's advocated for fell apart. Things he was not able to do, like bring Ben Johnson in, which he tried very hard to do. Ben Johnson said, "Get the fuck out of here. I'm going to the Bears." So he couldn't convince him to come to the Raiders. But you know, how are they going to look at this situation and say, wow, Mendoza, we're setting up Mendoza for success with a few more free agents and a draft? and the first pick and your first round pick is the quarterback, so you don't get, you're not improving the roster, outside of that with your first round pick here. Whereas if you traded back, now you could get, like, they should trade back to 2 with us. We would give them probably a haul to trade back, and then you still have the second best pick in the draft. We could give them a number 1 next year, a number 2 this year. We could give them a player so they could really improve the roster, try and bridge it with Geno, and then really go for it. If you want a rookie, you built up your roster next year because you did free agency this year, draft this year, free agency next year, and now you take your rookie when there'll be more choices available, presumably. And the roster's in much better shape, and that rookie then has a chance to really be successful. Now, that's me speculating. So, but who knows what they're going to do? But I don't think it's a smart idea. I mean, it's the Sam Darnold conundrum. Well, it benefits everybody, JoJo, but it's like I told you, money is not a problem for us. It wasn't before, and it's not now. But if we wanted to go to 20, by the way, we were having a conversation where somebody was putting out that Willis is going to make $20 million next year, and SpotTrack has him at 10.6. But PFF came out with, since then, PFF came out with their projections. They're projecting for Malik Willis to make 20. Now, that seems outrageous to me. The man has started 6 games his whole life, including 1 last year. 1. We're going to give a guy $20 million? But the state of the quarterback position is such. Now, even if we needed to go to 20, we could do it. We could have done it before. Now, with the cap going up to over 300, we could do it even easier now. So we got no problems with money. None. We can create even more cap space very easily. Very easily. So we don't have to worry about that. What we have to worry about is Malik Willis the right fit for us, considering his lack of games started and playing time? Is Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji really want to roll that dice again? Or do they want to go for somebody who doesn't have the ceiling, but is a much higher floor, like a Kirk Cousins? You know what you're getting. It's not great, but it is good usually. You're taking a risk with the age, of course. But are they going to really want to take a risk on a guy like Willis, who could be great, could be elite, but could also suck? Or do they want a steady 80 to get this train on the fucking tracks, which is what I think they're going to do, especially considering this offseason. In the beginning, I was all on the Willis train. But then this offseason happened, and it's been all over the place where we're getting killed in the media, which isn't good, but it is what it is. Because one of the things that happened is, like, then Pat McAfee picks up the story of between Wink Martindale and John Gruden, that false report from dickhead Rosenblatt. Because of that false report, now he does a segment, hey, Wink Martindale, John Gruden, nobody wants these jobs with the Jets. He did a whole segment on it. And it's like, it's understandable from his point of view, but that's one of the ways in which this bad reporting gets manifested, and now it gets amplified. You may say Pat McAfee's a joke. Pat McAfee is extremely influential in the sports and football world. His show is watched by all the important people. Everybody watches McAfee. It's and it's on ESPN now. It's not just on YouTube. So the fact that we had an asshole report, let's just say we had a lack of journalistic ethics report from Zach the Hack, who, by the way, is employed by Badlands, and some of you pay Badlands money. You need to demand Caparoso gets rid of that guy off his payroll. Eddie Hunt did a good action on Instagram, how many of you are willing to go to Caporoso and say, hey, get this jerkwad off your payroll or we're canceling? I don't know. But that's and a lot of people saw that, and a lot of people don't go into details with stuff. They just see a thumbnail, they'll listen to McAfee for 10 minutes or whatever, and they're not going to dig deep into this. They're going to go, wow, nobody really wants to work for the Jets. That LOL Jets. And that players see that, coaches see that, people see that, agents see it. So these people are just making life much harder for the Jets. And so it's like, we're going to have to try to figure out what makes the most sense for the player. And maybe now Willis doesn't think this makes the most sense. He's like, that's a dysfunctional team. Nah. Let me go with my Green Bay homies down in Miami. Regardless, maybe I take less money, but I feel a lot more comfortable with my Green Bay homies, right? Down in Miami. And maybe he's got to compete with Tua or something, Maybe they give him a 3-year deal. He competes with Tua year 1. Whatever happens, happens. But by year 2, the idea is, okay, Malik, the job's going to be yours. We got to get past this cap situation. Maybe they do something like that. And all because we seem more dysfunctional than we are. Now, we bring a lot of it on ourselves. Woody brings a lot of it on himself. The things we've done, are not great in a lot of ways. So we do a lot of damage to our own selves, but then the media makes it worse. So maybe Willis doesn't want to come here now. And now Kirk Cousins, on the other hand, if you tell him we'll give you a 3-year deal, which maybe it takes to get him, and at least for the first 2, the job is yours, and we might, take a young guy to come up under you, whatever, but he might say, yeah, all I'm looking for is an opportunity and a decent situation on the field, and the decent situation on our field is Garrett Wilson. Hopefully we bring back Brees, a good running game. We got a good offensive line, especially if we're able to sign AVT or Simpson, and we got A.D. Mitchell, and we'll probably get a first-round or certainly second-round wide receiver this year, so we'll have a great wide receiver room. We got a decent tight end room. We got a good running game, an okay line. Garrett Wilson, A.D. Mitchell, those are 2 guys who could be stars. Well, Garrett is a star, but an A.D. could be. Out of all the situations, that might be the best for Kirk, for example. Plus, you got to know who his agent is, which I do. And of course, now people are not going to be happy to hear Kirk Cousins is our best option, but it may just be that's how it works out. So, didn't Max ask for a trade? I don't think so. I mean, maybe he did, but it's one of those things, Tampa, where they tell him, no, we're not, He was very upset, though. He was very upset at the end of the year, Tampa. If you remember, he didn't want to sit out any games. He was injured. He got surgery. But tough as nails, he wanted to keep playing, even though they were losing. And they were like, no, we're putting you on IR. He's like, fuck you, and stormed out of the facility. So I don't think he asked for a trade, but he was not happy. Now, a lot of people are saying that he might get traded because he's obviously not happy. But then they fired Pete Carroll. I'm pretty sure Spytek and Brady could smooth it over with him. But they might trade him. Like, it might be smart to trade him. Just get a haul. They need, the roster's so bad, they need a haul. The free agent, doesn't matter how much cap space you have if A, free agents don't want to go there, and B, there aren't that many great free agents available. So sure, you could get a bunch of below average players, but that doesn't really help you that much. Dodester, little late. He's a member of the Inner Circle. You might want to join the Inner Circle because you get exclusive items and quarterback grading and like college quarterback grades and all sorts of exclusive extra stuff, all for $2 a month. $2. One less Starbucks every month, and you get incredible information that you get nowhere else. Not to mention, Alan Dodes, like old Frankie, SUNY New Paltz legend. Dodes for rugby, Frankie for baseball. Mateer's not in the draft, Richard. I'm laughing because those people who know when we were doing our live charting of one of the college games know why I'm laughing. But Mateer's not in the draft, buddy. Yeah, Dodes. I mean, SUNY New Paltz, that's what he was known for now. That was back in the day. Not so much anymore. But New Paltz, for those who don't know, is a very hippy dippy town. And it was an informal, field that they called the tripping fields. You can imagine why. What about Marcus Mariota? Now, Mariota is an option we do have. And I'm going to be doing a video with all of our options. So just so you know, probably this week, as long as I feel okay with this head cold, I'll do a video with all of our options, trade options, free agent options. You'll see, and we'll do a comparison of their PFF grades, their age, what their projected salaries are, who their agents are, what the situations of their team is, and what they would be looking for. We're going to do that in a full video probably this week. Richard says, can we acquire a quarterback who can complete? It has been years now. Well, that's kind of the argument for getting Cousins, right? You're not going to get a superstar at this, but he can complete a forward pass. He can run an offense. He can give you at least threat balance. This is why I'm thinking more and more it's Kirky Cuzzo, because he can give you stability. You want to run the ball? All right, but you need a quarterback who can at least be a threat, and he can do that. You go with Willis. Sure, he might be great, but he might flame out and be terrible. I can't cancel balance. Never join. Right. Well, don't in the future. That's for sure. Well, he's the quarterback coach of your Miami Dolphins. So Joe Mike says Kirk Cousins with Frank Reich makes the most sense. All right, Joe. I agree. 100%. This is what I'm thinking. If we get Reich, and especially if we get Roman as a run game coordinator, assistant OC, that's not a bad outcome, even though the process was crazy. It's not a bad outcome to wind up with Reich, Roman. Remember, Roman was great at the running game. Remember all those complex running schemes he would put together for Baltimore? He was great with that. Now, you don't want him to be the OC because you do want to throw the ball occasionally, but if we had Reich, Cousins, and Roman, that's not bad considering our options. I mean, it's not great either, but Scott says I'd trade Crosby. What would you give up if you're Muji to trade up if the Raiders are willing? We do need to bring in a lot of talent. Well, I'm kind of conflicted. I graded out um I graded out Mendoza very well this year, obviously, like a lot of people. However, the more tape you watch of him, he kind of had a perfect situation in Indiana. And they didn't ask him to do a lot. And he also runs awkwardly and often, which is a high injury risk. And so it would depend on what your final grade on Mendoza is and whether you think he's a product of his situation at Indiana or he can really do everything you need him to do. And I don't know. Because one thing you could say is, well, he did, for example, a lot of what he did at Indiana was as follows. He looks out. If the corner is giving free release to the wide receiver, you just run a quick pass. You just get the ball and quickly pass it out to the wide receiver, and he gets as many yards as he can. That's not hard to do. That's one thing that he did a lot to get yardage. Now, it's smart, but it's not a high level quarterback skill. Then, second, they had a great running game that put them in great third down situations. And third, when he needed something, a lot of times he did a back shoulder throw to Cooper or Surratt, who are great at catching those. Now those are tough throws to make, so that's that's a plus. But he kind of relied on that a lot. And then we got in trouble. He didn't handle pressure that well, though he escaped the pocket well and runs, and he's faster than you think when you look at him. He's more athletic, but he runs a lot and he runs awkwardly, which makes me think he's in high injury risk. He's not a fluid athlete. He's more athletic than you think, but he's not a great athlete. So all those things combined were really how he was successful at Indiana. Now none of that's really a negative. He did what he was asked to do. The question is, can he do a lot of the things that you need him to do with the Jets or in the NFL, which is a lot more passes over the middle, where there's a lot more traffic, a lot better timing on different routes, deeper route concepts. The deep throws he did throw, guys were generally wide open. So it really depends on how convicted you are about Mendoza. If you're convicted and that guy's a superstar, then you give them basically whatever they want within reason. For example, we could give them people aren't going to like this, but if you're convicted on Mendoza, he's definitely a superstar, then you would give them the 16th pick, the second pick, obviously the pick swap, the 16th pick, a second rounder this year, and a first rounder next year. Probably as a bare minimum, just to go up one spot. But because you're convicted that you're getting your franchise quarterback, you do what it takes. Now, if you're not convicted and you're like, we like him, but we don't love him, then you don't do it. So it's going to come down to their analysis. I myself, I think I'm in the camp of I like him. I wouldn't mind having him, but do I love him where I know he's going to be great? No, he could be great, but I don't know that. He could be. But to me, I don't know. And also you have to think, do Glenn and the regime want to pin their hopes and their jobs on a rookie at this point? Or do they want to get the thing on the tracks and then then survive, not get fired, and then build the team? Like, it would be awesome if the optimum outcome for this year would probably be, don't make a trade, build up the team, with the picks and free agency, get Cousins, Reich, and Roman. They run the offense. Glenn calls the defense. We stock up the players so that the talent levels up, and then we have Glenn calling it. Probably better than what we had. And then we win 8, 9 games, fight for a playoff spot, and everybody calms the fuck down. Maybe even get in the playoffs with 9 wins. Sometimes you can. But anyway, that's the kind of season he needs to have. So is he going to have that with a rookie? Most rookies struggle. Even the ones who turn out good. Most of the time, you don't get a C.J. Stroud rookie year. So Joe Burrow rookie year. So I think that's going to influence their thinking. They have to, in order for them to do what they want to do long term, they have to survive this year. Glenn, more than Muji, in my opinion, is on the hot seat. Very hot seat. So how am I going to navigate this being on the hot seat? I want to stay here if I'm Glenn. I think I can do a great job. I need a quarterback who can do at least the basic things that we need a quarterback to do, like get rid of the fucking ball in a timely manner. So that's why I think they're trying to do Reich, Roman. Maybe they're trying to do this: Reich, Roman, Cousins, and Bevel as the QB coach. That wouldn't be bad. All 3 finalists get a job. You get a job, you get a job, you get a job. I don't know if they would take those, but we'll see. A lot more comments. Well, it's not that it's Mike McCartney. It's that it's Vayner Sports. Who owns Vayner Sports, boss girl? There's Dodes. Who owns Vayner Sports? My people? Ashton can come in a $2 million contract. He's a good special teamer and backup. Why not? $2 million. Now, if he wants $10 million, forget it. But $2 million contract to be a special teamer and a backup, yeah, why not? Yeah, we talked about this earlier, Troy. This is exactly what we basically said. Now, who owns Vayner Sports? This is the part of this, unless you guys know, this is the part that's the important part. So you went, last time we talked about it, some of you went and looked it up. It's not hard to find, it's on Spot Track. But you got to know who owns Vayner Sports. That's the important part. All right, Dode's got it. Now, who are AJ and Gary Vaynerchuk? Are they notable people? Who are they? Who are these people? There you go. Now, AJ and Gary Vaynerchuk are not big Jet fans. They are perhaps the biggest Jet fans on earth, to the point where Gary, who is extremely wealthy because he owns many, many businesses, wants to buy the Jets someday. He doesn't think he can do it at this point. I saw an interview with him. So at this point in time, do you think that having the owner of Vayner Sports as the agent of Kirk Cousins can help us get Kirk Cousins? I would think so. Because unless they're now, Vayner Sports has lots of other clients, such as Tyler Conklin, for example. And Mike McCartney is the agent who does all the deals for them. But so we let Tyler Conklin walk. I was hoping Vayner would help us keep Tyler Conklin for $3-4 million. And if he wants to come back, that's also fine. But at this point in time, with the situation we're in, these guys, they generally play it cool. They don't generally just put their clients on the Jets. That's not what they do. If they did that, then they would be a laughingstock, and they want their agency to be successful. You can't have, if it makes sense, fine, but you can't have, a bias toward one team, even if it's your favorite team. So they put guys where it makes sense and where they get the best deal. Okay. But at this point in time, we can give, it seems to me now, who knows this fucking market? Maybe the Cardinals go crazy and they want $40 million to Kirk Cousins or some shit. But I don't know. Or the Raiders, for example. They want to bridge it with Cousins. Who knows? But it seems to me that it's a confluence of, these agents are going to tell Cousins straight what it's really like with the Jets, not going to be influenced by the media too much. And B, they could convince him that it's actually the best situation out there for him, while also getting a good payday as well for the next 2 or 3 years. We could promise him 2 or 3 years, really. Because we could tell him, look, in 27, we'll probably take one in the first round, but we'll sit him for a year. So that way you get 2. And at this point in his life, Kirk Cousins may just want 2 full years. And that's it. What more could you expect? He'll be 40 years old by then. So that could come into our favor. That's a factor in our favor. If we hire Frank Reich, that's another factor in our favor, because then you would have Reich and Glenn and Cousins as devout Christians. So they would have a bond there. They would have a kinship there with that. Same thing with Willis about that. But so in that regard, we kind of have a slight advantage. In other words, he'll get the real information from his agent, rather than somebody who's based in Miami like Rosenhaus or some other place. So that's the beauty of that. Yeah, Vayner has a lot of clients, uh, and it doesn't mean that they're just going to put everybody on the Jets. They can't do that. RC, there's one person. I mean, for all the sell the Jets Woody people, there's one person on earth who can do all the things that need to be done. I'll leave it to your imagination who that one person is. Could we sign Cousins and Willis? Well, why would Willis sign to be behind Cousins? And why would Cousins want to compete with Willis? That doesn't make any sense. Those guys should be looking for a clear path to playing time. That's what they should be looking for at this point in their careers. Cousins wants to finish out his career with it. Obviously, they want to compete and go to the playoffs and all that. But for the most part, he doesn't want to be a backup anymore. He didn't want to be a backup in Atlanta. And same thing with Willis. Willis is coming out now with 4 years of experience. He wants an opportunity, a pretty clear opportunity to start. Now, could it be that there's no market for Willis as a starter? That is, I guess. But you would think that the Dolphins would be in on him. The Cardinals should be in on him. There's probably others. If we look at Tankathon, the Raiders, interestingly, the Raiders could go, hey, why don't we take a chance with a veteran? In other words, why don't we sign Willis and let him, and that's not a bridge, but we're going for a franchise quarterback, but one with 4 years in the league already, rather than a rookie just starting out. They could make that choice, and they give a lot of money to Willis. And then they don't take Mendoza, right? And Mendoza falls to us. I don't know if we would take him. It would be interesting. But Arizona, maybe they make a play. What about Miami, we mentioned? What about the Rams? The Rams could pay him a bunch of money to sit 1 year behind Stafford and then good to go. But there's Pittsburgh. The Steelers, depends. Are they going to sign Rodgers? You could see him go to Pittsburgh. That's another team. There's not a ton of places that make sense, but there's a few, which I guess is good news. Only way I would see that happening is if no one wants to give him a starter contract, we give him a half and half, and he likes the chances of beating out Cousins. But then Cousins probably wouldn't come here. I mean, Cousins is very finicky. I think he wants to start, and he wants to know for sure he's going to start. So I don't think Cousins would even go for that. If we're getting Cousins, I think we got to say, Kirk, the job is yours. We're going to get some backups, but don't worry. For the next 2 years at least, it's your ship, unless, it goes very badly, etc. Yeah, Cousins and Trubisky, right. Something like that. Yep. So that's where we are. Samini is publishing an article about Super Bowl rings. And so no more other news. So now we know that 2 people are coming in next week. We have not heard for sure that Frank Reich, the Third Reich, is coming in next week. But it is presumed that that's going to happen. No other rumors coming through the wires at this point in time, so we'll call it a day. Thank you for joining me for Coffee with Frankie. No coffee today because of the head cold. Sorry about that. But I think you should join the inner circle. It's clicking the join button down below. Otherwise, just subscribe to the channel or at least give me a thumbs up. Really helps out with the algorithm. And I'll see you guys